He walked into the summit with nothing but a prototype and a dream. A single dad, exhausted, overlooked, barely holding it together, standing alone in a room filled with billion-dollar egos and polished professionals. They laughed at his clothes, whispered about his worn shoes, dismissed his invention before even seeing it. But one person saw him. She was the most powerful woman in the building, the CEO of the biggest tech empire in the country. She didn't see a joke, she saw a man who refused to give up. A mind filled with brilliance, not just desperation. A heart full of fire, not just grief. And when she stepped forward, everything changed. What started as pity quickly turned into respect, and then something more. In a world ruled by image, power, and legacy, a bond began to grow that would challenge them both. Because she wasn't just about to invest in his idea. She was about to risk everything for the man behind it. Stay with us, because this is not just a love story. It's a story about courage, value, and what happens when the world finally recognizes the quiet genius who's been there all along. Eli stepped into the summit and immediately regretted it. The lobby alone looked like a space station. Cold glass walls, sharp lines, and people who wore their confidence like armor. Everywhere he turned, there were perfect suits, gleaming shoes, and wristwatches that probably cost more than his entire van. His blazer felt too tight across his shoulders, his hands too calloused for the drinks they were passing around in crystal flutes. But he clutched the small prototype in both hands like a shield and pushed through. He introduced himself at the first booth. The man behind it looked him up and down and didn't bother hiding the smirk. "That yours?" he asked, pointing to the device. "Looks like it belongs in a museum." The laughter wasn't loud, but it spread. Quiet enough to be cruel, casual enough to sting. Eli moved on. Another group. Another wall of polite nods and dismissive glances. "Is this handmade?" someone asked, as if the word were poison. It was. He found an empty corner and sat, fingers brushing over the wires, the housing, the solder lines. He'd poured himself into this thing, nights and weekends, skipped meals to buy the parts. And now he felt like a child showing up to a race with a wooden cart. He didn't see her approach, not yet. But she saw him and didn't look away. Lena Voss didn't blend in, not here, not anywhere. As the CEO of NovaCore Technologies, she was used to commanding attention. Her keynote had already set the room buzzing. Investors were chasing her shadow, analysts dissecting every word she'd said about future energy models and sustainable infrastructure. Cameras followed her, but she ignored them. She was scanning the room for something real. And then she saw him. In a sea of polished faces, he was a bruise of sincerity. Seated alone near the back, hunched protectively over a crude-looking device, unaware that the room had already dismissed him. She watched his fingers trace the lines of his invention, not out of anxiety but affection. He wasn't networking. He wasn't posing. He was building something, even now. Lena walked away from a conversation mid-sentence. No one stopped her. She approached slowly. The closer she got, the clearer it became. He wasn't just an outcast here. He was raw potential. That strange little machine. It pulsed with something that looked like hope. When he finally looked up, their eyes met. His guard went up instantly. He looked ready to be laughed at again. But she smiled. And then she asked the question that would shift the earth beneath him. "Can you show me how it works?" Eli stared at her. He didn't recognize her, not at first. He only saw a woman whose presence silenced the room. Her voice was calm, but edged with certainty. The kind of voice people listened to. The kind of voice no one interrupted. It made him nervous. Still, he nodded. He opened the casing, gently revealing the heart of his invention. As he began to explain, his hands steadied. The words started slow, careful. "It converts erratic charge fluctuations from micro-wind turbines into a stabilized power stream," he said, voice low. "You could power an entire cabin off a 2-hour charge window. She leaned in, listening without blinking. Not nodding for effect, just listening. No rare earth metals? She asked. None. It's made from reworked scrap. Everything in this is post-use. He glanced down. Except the core, but I have a better design on paper. She turned the device in her hands gently. Why haven't I seen this before? I don't have a team, he said. Just me, and my daughter drawing diagrams on napkins. Her expression softened. Around them, a few nearby guests had started to whisper, but she didn't care. I want to test it, she said. Eli blinked. Sorry, who did you say you were? She smiled. Lena Voss, Novacore. And just like that, he realized he wasn't pitching anymore. He was being seen. Word spread fast. By the time Lena Voss escorted Eli to the front of the summit hall, the room had shifted. Whispers turned into silence. People stood straighter. Some scoffed under their breath. Others narrowed their eyes. But everyone watched. At center stage, she called for the lights. I'd like to make an impromptu evaluation, she announced. Her team scrambled. Tech assistants rolled in screens and scanners. Eli stood stiff beside her, overwhelmed and still clutching his prototype like it might vanish. She held up a scorecard, the kind reserved for formal product, judging at the summit's final rounds. Bright, bold, simple. A large, red 10. Gasps. No one had received a perfect score in years. Not publicly. Not like this. I've seen hundreds of designs this week, she said, and I've met hundreds of minds. But sometimes innovation isn't dressed in polish. It's buried in grit. This, she turned to Eli, is the most forward-thinking energy stabilizer I've seen in a decade. He couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Someone in the crowd actually dropped their champagne glass. And then, for the first time since he'd arrived, Eli smiled. Not because he belonged, but because someone believed. The moment the scorecard came down, everything changed. Eli stepped off the stage in a daze. The bright lights behind him, the silence of the crowd still echoing in his ears. For a man used to being ignored, the attention felt heavy, almost unbearable. People who wouldn't give him the time of day earlier now stared, whispered, tapped at their phones like his name had suddenly become search-worthy. He tried to retreat into the background, but the spotlight had followed him off stage. Lena walked beside him, calm and unreadable. Her presence kept most people at a respectful distance, but he could feel the temperature of the room shift, the quiet resentment, the intrigue, the hunger. A few investors began circling, some smiling too wide, others offering business cards with rehearsed charm. I don't know what's happening, Eli muttered. You're being seen, she said, and that scares people. He looked at her. Why'd you do it? Because your idea is good, and because I trust what I see in your eyes more than what I read in any pitch deck. He shook his head. People like me don't win here. She stopped walking. Then it's time that changed. He didn't realize it yet, but the most powerful woman in the room had just become his fiercest advocate, and perhaps something even more. They met the next morning, long before the summit buzzed to life again. Eli arrived early at the rooftop cafe Lena had reserved. He didn't expect her to actually show, but she did, right on time, with no entourage, no assistants, just 2 coffees and a folder full of notes. She didn't waste time. I studied your design last night. The math checks out, but your thermal regulator needs a better failsafe. What if we bridge it with graphene reinforcement? He blinked. You stayed up running calculations? I don't sleep well, she said. Too many ideas. That made him smile. They leaned over sketches, debated mechanics, corrected each other mid-sentence. For the first time in years, Eli wasn't explaining things to be understood. He was building on ideas with someone who kept pace, someone who made his mind run faster. And somewhere between a formula and a joke about molten circuits, he noticed the way she smiled. Not the polished, public smile she gave on stage, but the real one. the quiet one that made her eyes soften. They weren't just building something technical. They were building something fragile and very real. By the afternoon, the news had already spread beyond the summit walls. NovaCore CEO backs unknown inventor. From garage to greatness? Romance brewing at the summit. The headlines weren't about the invention, they were about the pairing. Whispers followed them everywhere now, not just of curiosity, but criticism. Lena was accused of favoritism. Eli was branded a charity case. She expected the backlash. He didn't. I didn't ask for this, he told her. You didn't have to, she said. This is what happens when power gets nervous. He looked away. They think I don't belong. They think I used you. She stepped closer. Then, let's prove them wrong. That night, she sent a message to her board. She was making a personal investment in Eli's prototype. No corporate filter, no soft play. A risk and a statement. Her board didn't like it. One of them threatened to resign. Another demanded she reconsider. She didn't. And that's when Eli realized something important. Lena didn't just believe in his work. She believed in him. Is this where you built it? She asked. Eli hesitated before opening the creaky garage door. The summit had ended. The flashbulbs were gone. And here she was, standing in his world now. Oil stains on the concrete, rusted shelves, piles of discarded parts and dreams. It wasn't a lab. It was a survival bunker dressed as a workshop. He stepped in first. It's not much. It's perfect, she said. He showed her the workbench where he soldered circuits by flashlight, the spot where his daughter drew spaceships on old invoices, the wall with notes scrawled in permanent marker when he ran out of paper. Lena ran her fingers across a half-finished model. You made all this alone? He nodded. Between shifts, when my daughter was asleep. She turned to face him. You're not just an inventor, you're a fighter. That hit him harder than he expected. You know, he said, half laughing, I used to imagine showing this place to someone who actually cared. She smiled. You just did. In that garage under flickering light and shelves full of forgotten parts, something electric passed between them. It wasn't just voltage. Lena wasn't used to hesitating. She built her empire on clarity, on fast decisions, on moving before anyone else could react. But standing in that garage, watching Eli talk about resistors and failures, she felt something she hadn't in years. Vulnerability. She could offer him funding, labs, publicity. But that wasn't what he needed most. He needed someone to believe in him when it wasn't convenient, when it wasn't profitable. So she made a decision she hadn't made since her early startup days. She took a personal risk. I want to fund this, she said. But not through NovaCore, not through any venture channel. I want to back you, personally. Eli froze. Why? Because you remind me of how I started, and because I believe what you're building is more than tech, it's purpose. He didn't know what to say. Gratitude flickered in his eyes, but also fear. What would happen if this failed? She touched his hand. It won't. And with that, the partnership became something deeper, something neither of them could fully name not yet. But it had begun. Eli couldn't sleep. The garage was quiet now, tools neatly arranged for the first time in years, blueprints spread across the workbench, like pages of a dream finally unfolding. Yet he sat in the old desk chair, hands clasped, staring at nothing. His daughter stirred behind him on her cot, the soft rustle of blankets, a gentle reminder of why he was doing any of this at all. She'd fallen asleep, excited not about the tech, but about Lena. She smiled at me, she had said. She really liked my spaceship drawing. Eli smiled too, but now, alone, he wasn't so sure of himself. He wasn't afraid of failing. He was afraid of failing her. Letting Lena in, accepting her support, it wasn't just about business anymore. It was about trust. And trust had always been expensive. He heard a soft knock on the door. It creaked open. Lena stepped in, holding 2 mugs of tea. No heels, no pretense, just her. "You're doing that thing again," she said. "What thing?" "Looking like the weight of the world is on your shoulders." He chuckled quietly. "It kind of is." She sat beside him. "You don't have to carry it alone." He looked at her, really looked. The most powerful woman he'd ever met, offering him more than partnership. For the first time, he considered saying yes. The next day, the offers rolled in like a flood. Startups wanted licensing rights. Billionaires wanted a stake. Press agencies demanded interviews. Even Eli's old employer, the one who laid him off without notice, reached out to reconnect. And then came the moment he didn't expect. Novacore's board submitted a formal acquisition proposal not from Lena, but from her company's executives. A 7-figure sum, global distribution, full rights. He stared at the contract, stunned. It felt like a dream come true. Until he read the fine print. Total ownership transfer. He'd lose creative control, lose his voice. The invention would live, but not on his terms. He took a long walk, then called Lena. When she arrived, she already knew. "You're going to say no." "I have to," he said. "If I give this away now, I'll always wonder what it could have been. I didn't build this to cash out." She nodded. "Good. You're not mad?" She shook her head. "Proud." And in that moment, he saw what real partnership looked like. Not someone who saved him, but someone who stood beside him. Not a lifeline. A lighthouse. 6 months later, the prototype was no longer a prototype. The garage was now a full workshop, tools replaced, circuits polished. A new workstation built in the corner where his daughter once doodled now displayed their first official unit, small, sleek, elegant. And next to it stood Lena, dressed down, sleeves rolled up, soldering something herself. Their company, Hearthspark, launched its first pilot program that month. Local homes in struggling neighborhoods were outfitted with clean, stable energy using Eli's invention. No fanfare, just real results. Word spread. Then the press came again. But this time, Lena made sure he was the face. "This is his dream," she told them. "I just helped build the road." The launch event wasn't flashy. A few lights, a demo station, and a quiet crowd. But when the first home lit up on off-grid power, the room erupted, not in applause and tears. A child's breathing machine kept running through the night. A grandmother's heater stayed on during the storm. And through it all, Lena watched Eli standing at the edge of the stage, hand in his daughter's, smiling like a man who finally knew he was enough. They never planned it. There wasn't some perfect moment or candlelit scene. Just 2 people in the middle of wires and coffee and spreadsheets, finally breaking the silence that had been growing louder between them. It happened late one evening, after a long day testing voltage regulators. They were laughing about a failed demo that nearly toasted Lena's eyebrows when she turned, paused, and said, "You've changed my life." Eli blinked. "I haven't done anything you couldn't do yourself." "You did," she said. "You reminded me why I started, why I cared. You made me believe again." He hesitated. "You're the most brilliant woman I've ever met," he said quietly. "But it's not your mind that keeps me up at night." That made her laugh, then go completely still. He reached out, nervous for the first time in weeks. She met him halfway. The kiss was slow, not desperate, careful, full of things they hadn't said. And when they pulled apart, both a little breathless, Lena whispered, "About time." They didn't need to define it. They'd already built something stronger than titles. The ceremony was small, quiet, and nothing like the gala that started it all. Just close friends, a few colleagues, and Lena's mother, who surprised them both by crying through the entire thing. Eli's daughter walked down the aisle first, clutching a circuit board bouquet she'd made herself. It lit up as she reached the front. Eli waited by the arch, nervous, excited, humbled. When Lena walked in, all he saw was everything he'd never thought he deserved and finally believed he did. They didn't make grand speeches. They just exchanged vows written in midnight margins of notebook pages and whispered over cups of tea. "I loved your invention," she told him, "but I stayed for the man behind it." "I thought I had to build something to be seen," he replied. "But you saw me before the world ever did." As they kissed, somewhere in the crowd, someone joked about the richest woman in the room marrying the poorest man. But that wasn't true anymore. They weren't poor. They were rich in purpose, in trust, in love. And for once, that was more than enough.